This is a story of a young medical student who bedraggled and having gone through a very, very difficult day, being tortured by his superiors, is walking home and witnesses a horrible crime taking place on the street. He's someone who very, very much wants to be a hero and is not allowed to be a hero. But it's that impulse that leads him into a very, very dangerous place and has terrible unintended consequences. So on some level it's a morality play, it's a fable about the dangers of heroism without forethought. It's the act of writing about those things that is therapeutic and allows me to be a decent person in my everyday life. If I didn't write about them, I think it's possible. A lot of writers say this: if I wasn't a writer, I'd be in prison. So I don't think that's too far from the truth. I don't know if we have it all within us. This is something that I think about a great deal, and it's a similar theme, both in Trouble as well as in The Genius. The idea of self-destruction in the name of art, a connection between art and madness, and I think that for me it's a subject of fascination because as a writer, as an artist, I sometimes feel afraid or limited in a certain way that I want to have a normal life. I want to have a stable life, and I guess I question all the time whether it's possible, whether the creation of true art entails some sort of self-destruction or madness or insanity. I hope it doesn't, because that's not a fate I want for myself. At the same time, I aspire. I have great ambition, and so it's a preoccupation of mine. It's an anxiety of mine, I suppose. I think that's the reason that so much of art, especially literature, deals with sex and violence, because those are the extremes of human experience, and it's where you find the most intense sensations, emotionally and physically, etc. Humor is a way of framing something difficult in order to make it, in order to be able to cope with it. But that's just sort of an innate part of my personality is that I find repulsive or disgusting things inherently very funny, and I think that's why I've found more success in Europe than in the United States, because it's sort of a European characteristic to take something very tragic and to laugh at it, whereas I frequently find that American readers sort of their reaction is very one-dimensional. It's just to be horrified, not to see what's so blackly funny. At heart, I consider myself still a comic writer, even though the books are very dark and violent and frightening in parts. I think my soul is the soul of a comedian, I think. We live in a cinema age. That's clearly true. That's the dominant form of artistic expression, and any writer who believes otherwise is kidding himself. And I think most writers owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the cinema, as far as teaching them how to frame things, how to set up the scene visually, how to establish the rhythm of conversation. At the same time, I believe that the novel still does offer perspective that cannot be achieved on film. The strengths of the medium are different, and I have tried in my writing to take the lessons of the cinema and apply them to a novel without losing what a novel truly has to offer, which is internal insight and the thought process that goes into any scene. That's the strength of fiction, in my opinion. Precision is always the ultimate goal, to choose the right word, to choose the right description. And the great Stanislavski said that generality is the enemy of all art, and so it's actually the effort to write about something very specific that gives something its general power. That's the principle under which I operate. Is that the more particular, the more I guess, dogmatic you are about finding the right detail, the more resonance and I guess breadth that the actual art will have. I left New York a couple of years ago, 4 years ago now, and my understanding is that I guess a lot of the there's been a lot of petty squabbling over the Ground Zero site. It's like we've already started to lose sight of the significance of that event. It's also a function of this age to have a very short, and unfortunately short memory, and it's I don't know, it's like I said, it's still hard. It's still hard for, I think, for a lot of us to think and think about and talk about. I don't know. That wasn't a very insightful or clear answer, because it's not something you can explain rationally or talk about in clinical or intellectual terms. In a way, it's almost a sign of recovery or health that people can get upset about stupid things. Before, everything seemed to have great importance, and it was common to hear people say, "Oh, well, that's not important. Think of it in the greater context." Now that people are back to doing their own selfish, jealous things, it's almost a sign that they're starting to, I guess, feel the pain of that less acutely.